Anyway,
If only you had one more fern and we could.
between two ferns? Yeah, between one fern.
The fern between
Yeah.
us.
I want to welcome everybody to our conversation today. I've got Michael Boyd, who is an attorney at Bell & Boyd Law Firm here in Magnolia. And I appreciate him coming along and having this discussion. There are a lot of things out there that are available for businesses, and we're going to talk about some of the programs that are available and loan possibilities for different businesses in this discussion today. So I'm CFO Dad. This is Michael Boyd with Bell & Boyd Law Firm, and we're going to jump into it. And so, as a disclaimer, what kind of disclaimer would you like to give to this video?
Well, as a lawyer, I would say this is not legal advice. You shouldn't take this to be legal advice or financial advice for that matter. The goal here is just to get some information out to folks so they can investigate for themselves and hopefully take advantage of and utilize some of the programs that exist. And so, you know, we certainly, if anyone claims right now to know everything about all of the programs and the things we're going to talk about, definitely do not trust that person.
Right.
Move on to someone else because right now there's a whole lot that's not certain, that's sort of undetermined. So the goal is to let everybody know there's some good things that are on the horizon that they should be prepared for, and there's some stuff that they should go ahead and apply for.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah, lots of programs. I work at People's Bank and Mustard Seed Wealth Management. This is not financial advice. This is not banking advice. So, just basically take what we're saying with a grain of salt. Hopefully we're going to try to point you in the right direction. And as further guidance comes out, maybe we can give you more updates. But we're going to do the best we can to get you the best information that's out there currently. And so as far as the programs that are out there, which programs do you think people need to be paying attention to, looking at for potential help in these uncertain times?
Well, first of all, I don't claim to know about all the programs that currently exist, but of the ones that I'm familiar with, the two that jump out right now that I think most small businesses in particular should be looking at are the EIDL program under SBA, and they can access that by going to sba.gov, and on that website, at the top of that page, there's a yellow banner. Click on that button and it introduces you to the EIDL emergency loan program. Okay. That is different from the payroll protection program, but it's already in place.
Right. And
so that's something that folks can go ahead and apply for and start down the road. And the second thing to talk about today, which I think is really the one that people want to hear most about, is the payroll protection program. Right. So those are the two main ones that I think people should be paying the most attention to right now.
What if somebody calls you and they say they're from the SBA and they want to help you get going on one of these things?
So first of all, if anybody calls claiming to be from the SBA, and by the way, we've already had one of those reports that's occurred with a client of ours, they are not from the SBA. The SBA will not cold call you looking to gather information about your business. You will be contacting SBA. And the good news is you can do that online, so it's relatively simple. And we do have a local SBA office that you can talk more about, but most of what you're going to be doing is online. So if someone calls you claiming to be from SBA, do not give them your information because they're just going to try to use that information to apply for the loan themselves, and you'll have more trouble down the road.
Right, yeah, absolutely. And yeah, we do have an SBA office at SAU, and we will link their information so you can reach out to them specifically if you want to. Okay, so let's talk a little bit then about the Paycheck Protection Program. I think that's probably the one that most people are talking about right now and the one that is getting the most attention. So what is the PPP, and how, what are some of the things that people need to be thinking about in applying for this?
Again, as you and I have experienced in preparing for this, you can go online and you will find 1,000 different explanations of it. Some of which are very different, and some of which are similar. And what I'm about to say is not to tell you or the audience that this is a complete list of the PPP. But in essence, what it's doing, and I think this is a really smart move by the government, which maybe is rare to say, but it's a good move by the government to help small businesses in particular. And I say small businesses, but it's businesses that have employees up to 500. And so anyone under 500 employees, but also including self-employed people, can apply for this. Now, it's not rolled out completely yet. They passed the law, but there's guidance coming out this week or next and rules coming out this week or next. And so there will be an application process. And so what that's intended to do is to give the small business owner that I'll use is the example, like we have here in Magnolia a lot of, is an opportunity for them to apply for a loan at essentially 2.5 times some of their monthly cost. And that is, it's essentially based upon their payroll cost. And so, or if you're a small business person, there's certain information that you probably want to go ahead and start gathering about your payroll for the last year. And so the Payroll Protection Program will allow you to have this loan that represents 2.5 times of your payroll cost, in rough terms, for the preceding 12 months. Take the average of the preceding 12 months. You come up with that number, and you can get times 2.5, and that's your maximum loan.
Yeah, and there's some things like people that make over $100,000. We're not exactly sure. You either cap it at 100 or exclude them altogether. We're not exactly sure yet.
That's not clear yet. It's obviously, there's hope that it's just simply anything over 100,000 that it simply operates as a cap. But for any small business, for instance, that had a $50,000 payroll, and not just the wages themselves, but essentially the paycheck that you're handing out. If they had $50,000 in payroll on average, then 2.5 times that could be their loan amount. And then the second part of that is that you're authorized to spend it on certain things. And people really need to familiarize themselves about what those things are. Because if you don't spend it on the right things, then that loan, you may run into an issue later if you seek to be forgiven that loan. That is the next great thing about the Payroll Protection Program, is that the loans are potentially forgivable. If you receive the loan properly, if you spend the loan properly, and you request forgiveness properly, then the idea is that it is later forgiven. Now, in the meantime, the other good thing about the PPP is you get these monies in this loan. Now, when that would actually happen, we'll see. But you've got a 6-month period before the first payment is due. Now, something I do want to explain real quickly is that, so that people understand SBA loans, this particular loan that we're talking about, the payroll protection loan, is going to come through your local lenders, or even the big lenders, but it'll come through banks. You don't go to the SBA for this loan, which is different in the EIDL. You get it directly from SBA or the federal government. Here, you're going to go to your local lender.
Okay, great. And there are some time frames. So the expenses that you may be eligible to spend the money on in order to get the loan forgiven, any expenses would have had to have been established by February 15th. So if you have a mortgage or some other expense that's a rent, those agreements had to be in place by February 15th. And then the period through which you can pay for these expenses is to the end of June, June 30th, I believe. But then there's another thing that's complicated, is that once you receive the funds, you've got 8 weeks to spend the money, from what we understand. So it's a little
correct.
Unclear,
so as a lot of programs, there are pitfalls. There are, I wouldn't call them traps, because I don't think they're intentional traps. It's just, there's certain qualifications, and it's easy. I think it will be easy for a lot of people to miss that. And they think, well, I get the loan, I put it into my operation account, and I need it to do X, Y, and Z. And so if you end up using that money for things maybe that aren't covered, it could cause problems. If you don't get it all spent, and we don't know the answer to this one yet, but if you don't spend it all within the 8-week period, what happens? So there are lots of unknowns, and everybody needs to really familiarize themselves. And I commend the SBA website to them. Here locally, SAU, the Small Business Center, would be of help, I'm sure. It's just going to be, there's a lot of good to this, but there's a lot of rules that still are going to have to be followed. The other good parts are that it doesn't require, for small businesses, it doesn't require you to put up collateral. Other SBA loans typically do.
Right.
Doesn't require you to be refused a loan somewhere else, like other SBA loans typically do.
Yep.
It doesn't require a whole lot of underwriting from the bank's perspective.
No credit check.
No credit check.
It's a zero risk loan on the banks, for the banks.
It is for the banks, but it's also called non-recourse, meaning that the individual, if you're a small business owner, let's say you have an LLC, your LLC is signing for this loan, you do not have to personally guarantee the loan.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah.
There's no personal guarantee involved, nor are any of the owners of the LLC at risk for the loan itself. Now, of course, I'm sure all those rules are off if fraud has been committed,
right, sure.
or if you've not followed the rules. I think a lot of those rules will be off. So
right.
I'm really talking to the rule followers here. If you follow all the rules, there are a lot of requirements that have been tossed aside, all, I'm sure, to purchase expediency. Make it easy for the banks, even banks that don't typically participate in SBA loans because they're complicated and difficult.
Right.
And easy on the small businesses so they can have access to liquidity, with the whole point being they can continue to employ people can go out into the world and spend their money on the economy like they have been.
Right. All right, so one other thing, as far as people applying for this, some people may have a moral dilemma within themselves. What would you suggest to somebody thinking through this? Should I apply for this or not?
I'd be lying if I didn't say I haven't had the same dilemma already. I'm in that dilemma, or should I apply or should I not? I mean, I'm a small business owner. I employ 10 people, including myself. I rely only on my small business to take care of everything for my family. So, that's what I have at risk, like every other small business owner has, like every business owner has, and every employee has. The bottom line is this. This is unlike anything that we have ever dealt with in this society. It's just not comparable to anything else that we know. And the biggest problem that we have is that we have no real way of knowing how long. So we don't know the length of this or the breadth of this. We don't know. We know that it's going to continue in this cycle of increasing in terms of the infection rate, which means as long as that's occurring, we know that businesses won't restart. But even when it begins to contract, we still won't be able to restart. We don't know how long this is going to take. And so for a lot of businesses, they can make it through a couple of months, okay. But over time, over the long haul, if this thing lasted 6 months, and this is what I think any small business owner should ask themselves, if this lasts 6 months, can you make it? And the second question is, if you wait to apply for this, are you sure that you will get it?
Right.
There are only about 350 billion, and I say only because we're talking about the entire United States is in the same boat. Only $350 billion allotted for this right now. And every small business in this country is affected by this. When I say small, really all the way mid-sized businesses are affected. And so I get I want to do it on my own, essentially the American way and the moral quandary of that. But I think it's unprecedented, and this is really, you've got to think about survivability of your business over time. Because if you can really say that I can go with a 80% drop in my business over the next 6 to 9 months, then maybe you don't do this. I applaud you if you can do that. That's great. But for your employees and for your families, I would think about that hard.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Was there anything else, anything that we haven't covered yet that we should? Or
no, I would just say that there are a lot of the good news and bad news, as we discussed before we started this show today, is that there are a lot of programs out there that can supply employees and employers with ways to buttress their home income and their business income. The bad news is that can be very confusing. And and we still don't even know the interplay of some of these programs. I mean, SBA, for instance, has disaster loans that are not the same thing as the EIDL loan. Some of them require that you put up collateral, some that you don't. We know some of the interplay between those programs and PPP, but we're not 100% because they really haven't put out any significant guidance on that yet.
Right.
So, it remains to be seen exactly how all will work, but the good news is there are things out there. You just need to find the right sources of information. Make sure it's reputable. If it's on the internet, you should doubt it unless you've found a really rock solid source of information.
Yeah, I mean, even before this, we read articles, and there's, you go out there and look, and people are saying all kinds of different stuff about how to figure out how much money you're eligible for, how to figure out which expenses are eligible to be forgiven, and so, go straight to the source. Again, and like you said, I think it bears repeating. If somebody tells you they know exactly how this thing works, they're lying to you. They don't know yet. So be wary of any information, but be looking to the SBA and other reputable sources that have the information on this. In fact, the application's already out there, and I'll link to that in the description here so you can see the application.
And one other important point for business owners to know is that the whole idea of the Payment Protection Program is to supply money to the business owner so they can pay their employees rather. And so there's a requirement that you continue to employ those people.
Yes.
And you start, the more employees, you may reach a point at which you have to drop employees. That's okay. They're not going to call the loan because of that, for instance. But you start to lose some of the forgivability of the loan if you start to lay off employees.
Right.
So that's the whole plan, and I think it's a pretty smart plan. Is here's the money to run your business for a couple of months, and then we're hopeful that we're through the worst of this by June.
Right.
And that's the whole idea.
Sure.
So they want that money to be into the stream of commerce, out into the economy, and the best way to do that is run it through the businesses.
And by the way, if you've already laid off people, you can bring them back on, and that's not that they will, look over that and still give you the PPP money if you, bring them back on.
Right.
So,
Unlike the situation where you can't, you don't need to run out and sign a new mortgage or do a new lease because they backdated it.
Right.
That's somewhat of a penalty provision there. With the employees, there is no penalty provision if you bring them back.
Right.
Now, I would urge caution about that.
Sure.
Because you don't want to do that unless you know that you've received that loan, because it's not, there are going to be some circumstances for small employers where it was a good thing for the employer and the employee to go ahead and do the layoff. So those folks could apply for unemployment, which is a whole other topic.
Yeah.
But so they could do that. So to call them back preemptively before that loan is I would say funded, would be a mistake, because check cashed because I suspect, I imagine everybody suspects, that there's going to be a gold rush of people going to this to try to get this relief, and we don't know what that's going to do to the system other than we can be sure that it's going to overwhelm the system.
Yes. Yeah.
And so, is it going to take you 10 days to get your loan funded, or is it going to take you 2 months? We don't. That's another unknown. So, so plan carefully. But yeah, the whole point again is try to maintain that workforce. The government's trying to get you to maintain what you have, and that requirement is only through June. And I say only, but I mean that's the reason they're loaning you up to 2.5 times your payroll expense.
Right. Okay. All right. Well, Mike, I want to thank you for coming here and having this discussion. I think it's been very helpful. It's going to be very timely information right now. And so just give a plug for your business. Tell
Sure.
who you are and what you do, just to inform my audience about what you can do for them.
Sure. Bell & Boyd Law Firm. We're on the square here in Magnolia. Small business. We represent small businesses. We represent people from all walks of life. We have a general practice. My partner Ronnie Bell, I believe, started it the firm back in '94, and then I came back here in 2008. We have a total of 6 attorneys now, offices in Springdale, Arkansas, here in Spring Hill, Louisiana. If we can't help somebody, we'll find you somebody who can. But what my firm is really focused on right now is working hard to come up with answers to the things that the issues we've been talking about. Because we want to help small businesses and guide small businesses on these questions, and to the extent we can also for employees that are in situations that are, worried and scared, like my family is, about what the future is going to hold, and just help with information and anything that we can do to help. That's where we want to be right now in this scenario.
Okay, great. Well, thanks.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.